My name is Emily Carver. I'm 35 years old, and for the last 11 years, I've sat behind the world's most fragile conversations, decoding, translating, sometimes intervening before the words turned into wars. But at this moment, I'm holding a plastic plate of coleslaw standing on a lawn in Stafford, Virginia, and trying not to break something. You're not really an intelligence, sweetie. You're just a translator. My father says it loud enough that the laughter from the grill dies for a second. He's got a beer in one hand, tongs in the other, and the same command voice he used when he was active duty cutting smug certain. I stare at him. My mouth goes dry. My hand tightens around the fork, not because I'm shocked he's said worse, but because he chose this moment. Surrounded by family on our first real gathering since the pandemic, where I had to fight tooth and nail just to get 3 days off clearance rotation. He doesn't even realize what he's done. Not fully. I can see it in his eyes. He thinks it's funny. My cousin Brian chuckles into his lemonade. Uncle Gary adds, "I always thought you worked for that dictionary company." You know Rosetta something laughter. Real now. Warm and stupid. I smile. A tight-lipped, polite little thing. I chew slow. Swallow. Inside, I feel 14 again. Invisible. Decorative. Disposable. My father turns his back, slaps a steak on the grill, and mutters, "Warriors fight." We don't whisper, and something in me snaps, but silently. He doesn't know what I did last week or last month, or in that scarred concrete bunker in Kosovo when a coded phrase passed between two men who didn't know I understood them until I stopped them from blowing up a train station full of school children. He doesn't know that every word I translate comes with a weight I carry home and lock behind my teeth, or that I dream in languages no one else here even knows how to spell. He doesn't want to know, because the truth would make his legacy smaller. I excuse myself. Walk around the side of the house toward the driveway. The sun is low, casting orange light across the hood of my rental car. I rest my hand on the roof. Breathe. Then I hear it. Engines, multiple, fast. 6 black SUVs barrel down the street and slide to a coordinated stop blocking both ends of the driveway. Tires screech. Doors fly open. Agents in tactical vests jump out. One of them shouts, "Federal order, stand down hands where I can see them." Screams erupt from the backyard. A folding chair clatters to the ground. Someone yells, "What the hell is this?" My father storms around the corner, fist clenched already in his full retired colonel posture. "Who the hell do you think you are?" The lead agent cuts him off with a gesture. 2 more fan out behind. One walks directly up to me. He doesn't say my name, but his eyes do. We hold each other's stare. He nods once, then turns to the others. Target confirmed. Civilian assets secure. Proceed with detainment. My father looks from the agent to me. "Emily, what the hell's going on?" I look at him, and for once, I say nothing, because if I open my mouth, I might scream. Within seconds, 3 men from the party are handcuffed and separated from the rest of the family. Brian is on the ground being patted down. Uncle Gary is shouting about rights. 2 other guests I barely know are being escorted to the SUVs with calm but unshakable force. I walk forward. "I'd like to speak to Agent Donahue," I say. The man nearest me gives the slightest tilt of his head and presses his radio, confirming contact. She's requesting Donahue. Seconds pass. Then a reply. "Donahue en route. Stand by." My mother is crying behind me. My cousin is filming with his phone until another agent gently lowers his hand and tells him to stop. And my father, he's frozen, not scared, not angry, just confused, as if the ground beneath him has shifted and he doesn't yet know whether it's a tremor or the beginning of a sinkhole. I walk up to him. Look him in the eye. "You remember 2 months ago," I say quietly, "when I told you the people you were doing business with were under investigation." He frowns. "That was hearsay." "No, Dad, it was a courtesy." He opens his mouth, closes it again. "You're not the target," I add, "but you've been warned." Behind us, another agent calls out that 2 of the detained individuals were on the federal watch list since March. My dad blinks, and that's when he finally sees me not as his daughter, not as just a translator, but as someone who's been watching this play out from an angle he never imagined. Donahue arrives, nods to me. No handshake, no ceremony. Got your drop, he says. That protocol's still live, I ask. He shrugs. Only 2 people ever built it. One's retired, the other's you. I nod. Then he looks at my father and says the line I will remember for the rest of my life. Sir, your daughter just prevented a domestic terror escalation tied to your backyard. You should thank her, and walks away. The rest is a blur. The SUVs load up. The agents disappear. Neighbors peek out behind blinds. Family members cry or curse or whisper. My mother doesn't speak to me. My uncle says, "You've ruined this family." And my father. He just stands there staring at the empty street like it might explain something. Later that night, after everyone's gone and the silence has settled like smoke, I sit in my car, hands on the wheel, phone in my lap. And finally, I let the tears fall. Not because I'm weak, because I'm finally done carrying the weight of being invisible in the house where I was born. I grew up in a house where medals mattered more than report cards, where my father's combat boots got more polish than my debate trophies, where the wall above the fireplace was a shrine to service Bronze Star Purple Heart-framed citations from the Pentagon. But nowhere was there a place for the words I loved. Words didn't win wars according to him. Combat defines character, he'd say, not conversation. So when I told him at 15 that I wanted to study linguistics, he sighed like I'd told him I was dropping out of school to juggle in a circus. "You're too smart to waste your brain on language," he said. "You should be in command, not just talking." But even then, I knew language was command. I was fluent in Spanish by age 10, French by 12, Arabic by 16. I spent weekends in the library memorizing phonetic shifts between Egyptian and Levantine dialects, while other girls chased boys and mall sales. I learned to hear things others missed emotion behind syntax lies inside grammar. I didn't just speak languages, I unlocked them, but my father never came to my academic awards. He only showed up to my brother's ROTC promotion. When I got into Georgetown School of Foreign Service, he called it a decent fallback. When I graduated top of my class, he said, "Let's see what you do with it." When I was recruited at 24 by an NSA-backed contractor for Tier 1 field linguistic analysis, he just blinked. "Sounds like translation with extra paperwork," he said. I didn't correct him. My job was never just translation. It was extraction, pulling meaning out of noise. I'd sit in dark rooms with a headset and a single-feed, low-quality chatter between 2 men 5 countries away, and I'd listen for breath patterns, shifts in code words, hesitations that meant something real was coming. I learned to read danger in the way someone said goodnight, to trace ideology in idioms. By 28, I was deployed to a secure compound in Djibouti to analyze real-time insurgent communication during a surge in hostage-takings. By 30, I had decoded a phrase, "the door needs fixing," that turned out to be a trigger code for an imminent strike on a UN convoy. We stopped it with 37 minutes to spare. No one thanked me. No one knew. And that was the point. I signed NDAs thick as textbooks, burned every journal I kept, learned how to answer. "So what do you do at weddings with, just government contract work? Some document review." Even my friends stopped asking. Because the real work was too complicated, too sensitive, too classified, and too lonely. But still I stayed, because somewhere some soldier's mother didn't get a knock on the door because of a call I flagged. And that was enough. Until last year, when I was pulled into a side operation tracking domestic radicalization, something I never expected to face here at home. The targets weren't foreign, they were familiar. I recognized the accents, the slang, even some of the voices. And then one file landed on my screen with a partial ID tag. J. Carver and Assoc Logistics Group. At first I thought it was a coincidence, a false match, common name, until I clicked the link and saw a picture. My father, not flagged as a suspect, not investigated, but connected indirectly to 2 subcontractors already under surveillance for communications with extremist militias. A logistics shipment that accidentally crossed into a known training zone. A warehouse lease registered to a shell company now believed to be laundering cash for arms buys. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I sent a soft ping to my supervisor. Request flag for passive monitoring. No contact. Possible familial sensitivity. It was approved within minutes. I didn't tell him. I couldn't. You don't tell a man like James Carver that he might be on the periphery of a domestic threat map. You don't even imply it, because to him, loyalty is binary. You're either with him or you're the enemy. So I sat on it, watched from a distance, tracked whispers, prayed it was nothing. Until last week when one of the flagged associates, a man who stood on our porch every 4th of July, made contact with a proxy server based out of Montana, linked to a private militia planning a federal warehouse breach. That's when I knew. This wasn't just intelligence anymore. It was personal, and I couldn't protect him through silence anymore. But I still didn't speak. I tried something else. A failsafe I helped design back in 2020, Protocol Sigma, a way to anonymously activate an interagency coordination response without flagging names or requiring direct clearance authentication. I wrote it into a ghost subroutine during the last shutdown scare when we feared agencies might go dark. Never thought I'd be the one using it. 3 days ago, I triggered Sigma, sent the alert, sent the data packet, and waited. No response, no confirmation. Until today at the BBQ when 6 black SUVs screamed down the street and agents yelled federal order, stand down. I still haven't told my father what I did because I don't owe him an explanation anymore. He taught me that warriors fight. What he didn't realize, some of us do it in silence. And when the time comes, we don't ask permission. We give the order. The fallout wasn't immediate. That's the thing about humiliation. It rarely arrives all at once. It creeps in like a draft under a locked door curling around your feet when you least expect it. For the rest of that night after the SUVs left and the agents disappeared, no one at the house said much to me. My Uncle Gary glared at me like I had betrayed some sacred oath. My mother avoided eye contact. My father, he disappeared into the garage and didn't come out until after midnight. I left before dawn the next morning. No one said goodbye. 3 days later, I received an internal notice from Security Review Emily Carver subject to administrative hold pending investigation into potential breach of protocol related to Operation Sigma 41. Clearance Tier 2 temporarily suspended. That was the real slap, not the suspension. The implication that I'd acted improperly, that I may have exposed internal intelligence to personal motives, even though I'd gone through proper channels, even though Sigma was designed for situations exactly like this, even though I'd followed every rule I had ever helped write. I called my supervisor, Marcus, a calm, steady guy who once told me I had nerves like fiber optics. He picked up on the second ring. "They're panicking," he said without greeting. "Your flag triggered a cross-agency collision. No one expected it." Expected what? That the intel would touch a retired colonel, let alone one with that name. I closed my eyes. My name. He didn't correct me. It wasn't about evidence. It was about optics. I wasn't just Emily Carver, linguist and field analyst. I was James Carver's daughter. And now they had to decide if I was a whistleblower or a liability. They scheduled me for an interview, internal affairs, 2 agents, 1 neutral room. No counsel needed, they said. Standard protocol. I'd been on the other side of that table before helping decode interview language patterns for lie detection. I knew what they were looking for: tension, guilt, hesitation. I walked in composed, left gutted. "Did you intentionally use Sigma to target a personal family gathering?" "No. I used Sigma to escalate an intel packet that would have been ignored through normal clearance procedures. Why not go through your direct superior because I did? 3 times. The file went dormant. Why wait until now to act? Because I confirmed the secondary comlink last week. I had to be sure. They nodded, took notes, asked again and again. By the time I left, I felt like I was being investigated for being related, not for being right. Then the real punch landed. I walked into the cafeteria that afternoon, and a colleague, Jules, who once toasted my birthday with overpriced champagne, nudged his tray away from mine. "You okay?" I asked carefully. He shrugged. "Just don't want to be in anyone's orbit right now." I nodded. Didn't push. Didn't need to. That was when I understood the machine was closing in around me. Not aggressively, strategically. Freeze the air, shift the weight, turn the gaze. I was radioactive. My badge still opened doors. But I stopped using it. I worked from home. Watched as group chats went silent around my name. Invitations disappeared. Projects got reassigned. And the real kicker, I got a message from my mother. Short, cold. Dad is furious. Please don't come home for Memorial Day. That one broke something in me, because even if I was angry with him, I never stopped protecting him, even when I shouldn't have. It wasn't just that they doubted me. It was that I had doubted myself long enough and hard enough that by the time I acted, it was nearly too late. And when I finally stepped up, no one said thank you. They just looked for someone to blame. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, my thoughts pulsing like a warning light. I followed every rule. I saved lives, and I'm still the one being questioned. So I got up, opened my laptop, and began building the second packet, the one they couldn't ignore. I called it proof of language, not just code, not just metadata, but every translation log cross-referenced message tactical cue and signature pattern that I had connected over the last 3 months. This wasn't emotional, it was methodical. In the entire case, every diagram, every photo, every snippet of voice was built by my hands. Not because I wanted recognition, but because I needed to survive. 2 days later, I received a message. From the same contact in Joint Task Force Echo who helped design Protocol Sigma with me years ago. Packet received. This is solid. We're pushing for realignment. Sit tight. It was the smallest green light I'd ever seen. But it was still a light. I stared at the message for a long time, and then I whispered out loud to the silence of my apartment, "You can't erase me. Not when I've already written myself into the system." The worst part wasn't the silence. It was the noise that came before it and who it came from. 2 weeks after I sent the second packet fully documented, thoroughly constructed, and scrubbed of any bias, I was called in for a clarification meeting. No formal charges, no suspensions, just clarification. That word, clarification, sounds neutral. What it means is, we're looking for a reason not to trust you. It was a smaller room this time. No table. Just 2 chairs facing each other and a third in the corner for the observer who said nothing but took notes like his pen was on fire. They asked questions in loops, doubled back on wording, pressed about my motivations. Why did you act on this particular file? What proof do you have that your family connection didn't bias your decision-making? Have you ever had emotional disagreements with your father regarding his political views? I kept my posture straight, my voice level, my breathing steady. But inside, I was breaking in slow, sharp pieces. By the end of it, one agent looked at me and said, "You're brilliant, Emily. No one's disputing that. But maybe you're too close to the data to see what's personal." I remember the way he said that. Soft, almost kind, like a surgeon numbing the skin before the incision. They didn't fire me. They just froze me. No clearances reactivated, no timelines given, no desk to report to. Just a polite instruction. "We'll be in touch when things resolve." Things. Like my reputation, my record, my name. I walked out of that building and sat in my car for a long time, didn't turn the engine on, didn't cry, just stared at the inside of my windshield like it might show me a version of myself I still recognized. It didn't. That night, I made one last call. To my mother. It rang twice before she picked up. "Emily," she asked, tentative. "Mom," I said, "I just want you to know I did everything right." She sighed. Not tired, exasperated. "Emily, your father's under so much pressure. He's getting questioned by people in his community. Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for him?" I froze. It's humiliating for him. You don't understand how people talk. He's a veteran. People look up to him. And what about me? A pause. Then, softly, "You always made things harder than they had to be." I didn't say anything after that. I just ended the call. That was when the bottom fell out. Because for the first time I realized no one was going to defend me. Not the agency. Not the colleagues I'd trained and mentored. Not even my own mother. and I was so damn tired of proving myself to people who would never even learn what I had protected them from. I stopped eating, not dramatically, just forgot. A full week passed where the only thing I consumed was coffee and old crackers from a bag in the kitchen. I didn't shower for 4 days. The plants on my windowsill wilted. I didn't care. Every message I got, every email, every ping felt like a threat. Every silence felt like confirmation that I'd finally become what my father always believed, the overreactor. The emotional one. The one who made messes she couldn't clean up. And maybe he was right, because what was the point of being the smartest person in the room if no one believed you? I opened a blank document on my laptop one night, typed 3 words, letter of resignation. I stared at them for a long time. I even filled out the date, my name, the line about effective immediately. I was ready to disappear from a world that had treated me like a risk instead of a resource. But then I opened the archive, not the classified one, the personal one, a folder called Echoes full of voice memos I'd kept over the years from mission briefings, emergency calls, post-op debriefs. My little museum of meaning. One file stood out. It was from 4 years ago in Kandahar. A voice young tense, British accented. We didn't know what the phrase meant. We had no idea they were going to detonate. Emily spotted it in the call. She saved the whole block. I don't even know how she just knew. I remember that mission. They never wrote my name in the report, but I remember every syllable I decoded, and I remember why I stayed. I deleted the resignation draft, closed the laptop, and I whispered, half sane, half furious, "You don't get to write me out of this. Not when I built the damn page." I slept that night, really slept. No dreams, no tension, just the calm of someone who had been pushed all the way down and found bedrock. There's a specific kind of clarity that comes after rock bottom. It's not peaceful. It's not gentle. It's surgical. I woke up the next morning at 5:17 a.m. without an alarm. Didn't drink coffee, didn't scroll. I sat down at my desk, booted up the air-gapped system I hadn't used in over a year, and opened a blank terminal window. It was time to stop trying to be believed, and time to be undeniable. The first thing I did was reanalyze my own work. I treated it like hostile data, detached, cold, focused. I reviewed the flagged conversations, recrossed them with metadata timestamps, realigned the voice prints. I rebuilt the entire trail from the first breadcrumb, a slang phrase buried inside an encrypted message from a domestic server, to an Eastern European contact using an outdated dialect of Pashto that only I or someone trained by me would have caught. Then I layered it over known weapons movement chatter, and suddenly the picture was clear. A coordinated operation posing as a civilian training initiative was set to breach a government storage facility outside of Quantico using stolen shipping manifests, and 3 of the voices involved had been at my father's backyard BBQ. I sat back in my chair numb. This wasn't just an abstract threat anymore. It wasn't some ugly echo on the edge of my professional life. It was inside my family photo album. I didn't cry. I built a file, one built to bypass doubt. Timeline analysis, voice pattern verification, code-switching transcripts from Arabic Pashto and Appalachian dialects, deep-tagged proximity logs showing those same men renting equipment under shell names with militia ties, and at the center of it all, without being the focus, James Carver. My father, never in the planning, never in the direct calls, but standing in the rooms, signing the checks, ignoring the signs. I wasn't going to accuse him. I wasn't going to protect him either. I was going to let the evidence stand on its own, because if I had learned anything from all those years in silence, it was this power doesn't always need to shout. Sometimes it just needs to show the receipts. Once the file was ready, I encrypted it and ran it through Protocol Sigma again, this time with elevated routing. But I didn't stop there. I activated a ghost relay, something I'd helped write into Sigma's original backdoor in 2020. It allowed secondary packet confirmation via a third-party audit system tied to Joint Task Force Echo. This relay didn't go through internal clearance trees. It went to the room above the room, to the people who only read things that made them nervous. 2 hours later, I got a response. Packet confirmed. Verification underway. Keep channel open. That's all it said. But I felt it in my bones. This was the real beginning. And then came the call I didn't expect. A burner number. Unlisted, secure. When I answered, a clipped female voice said, "We've reviewed the routing logs. You're either incredibly reckless or incredibly smart." I said nothing. Then she added, "We've been watching your father's associates for months. We didn't connect the personal proximity until your packet landed." Another silence. Then she said, "You built a failsafe for a world that never imagined it would need you. We need you now." She didn't offer my job back. She didn't apologize. She didn't have to, because in that moment I understood I wasn't a suspect anymore. I was the trigger that made the system blink, and the system was finally paying attention. The next 72 hours were a blur of encrypted updates, back-channel pings, and midnight relays. I wasn't officially reinstated, but I was looped in. My logs were cited in confirmation threads. My voice was requested on conference calls where only initials were used. And on the third day, I got a final message, package confirmed. Operation will proceed under Directive Echo 6. Target coordinates confirmed. Civilian exposure controlled. If on-site, disengage and observe. I reread that last line 5 times. If on-site. I closed my laptop and packed a bag. Not for work, for Virginia. The plan had been in motion long before I acted. My data just accelerated it. But I needed to be there. Not for revenge, not for glory. Just to watch it end. The BBQ was already on the calendar Memorial Day. Same house, same people, same lies. I showed up early bringing beer and a half-hearted smile. My father greeted me at the door like nothing had happened. "We missed you," he said. I nodded. "Guess I've been busy," I replied. For the first hour I played the part. Laughs, small talk, polite deflection, but my eyes were scanning constantly. And when I saw the 3 men I'd flagged standing near the shed talking low checking phones, I knew it was almost time. The hum of engines came first, then the crunch of tires on gravel. Then 6 black SUVs fanned across the driveway like pieces on a game board. Doors opened, agents moved, and a voice rang out just like before. Federal order, stand down, hands where I can see them. Chaos, screaming, people stumbling backward, my father shouting, "What the hell is this?" The lead agent moved past him without a glance, approached the 3 men. One reached for something. He was on the ground in 2 seconds, cuffed, contained, controlled. And me, I just stood there, calm, still, because I already knew how this ended. One agent turned and caught my eye. A subtle nod, recognition, and then the operation moved on without me, because my part was done. The code had spoken, the system had listened, and for the first time in years, I didn't have to say a word. There's a strange quiet that happens when a place you've always known becomes a crime scene. The family barbecue wasn't supposed to end like this, but as I stood there on the same patch of grass I used to race across as a kid barefoot and sunburned, the red and blue strobes from the SUVs painted the house in alternating guilt and revelation. And my father. He was unraveling in real time. He charged toward the agents like the rank on his chest still meant something. "This is my house," he barked, his voice booming. "You've got no authority to storm in here like this without the lead agent." Tall, dark suit, no name tag, cut him off without raising his voice. "Sir, please step back. You are not the subject of this operation, but you are advised to remain on the premises until full clearance is confirmed." My father looked at him like he'd been shot. Then he turned to me. And that's when it happened. The look. Not anger, not disappointment. Disbelief. "Emily," he said, breathless. "Did you know about this?" I didn't blink. I warned you. For a second, everything around us went quiet. The clatter of cuffs, the hum of engines, the murmurs from frightened cousins. Gone. It was just me and him, Colonel James Carver, and the daughter he spent 35 years underestimating. "You set them up," he said, barely above a whisper. "No," I said calmly. "They set themselves up. I just connected the dots." He looked like he'd been slapped. "You brought this here," he said. "No," I said again, softly. "You did." That was when the agent returned. "We've confirmed the primary threats are in custody. We're conducting a sweep of the shed and outer buildings." Shed. I already knew what they'd find. Not explosives, not weapons, maps, printed layouts of federal warehouses, communications equipment, burners, coded manifest lists with disguised serial numbers, exactly what I'd flagged 2 weeks ago. None of it in my father's name. All of it on his property. They weren't charging him, but they didn't have to. The damage was done. The name he held so tightly it had already cracked. My Uncle Gary screamed at the agents. Cousin Brian tried to film again and was calmly redirected. My mother stood on the porch, arms crossed, tears refusing to fall. She didn't look at me. I didn't need her to. One of the agents walked past me with a slight nod. Subtle, but I knew what it meant: mission successful. Source confirmed. Trail verified. I was no longer under scrutiny. I was back in the system, but not of it. Not anymore. After it was over and the SUVs pulled away, the party collapsed like a set left out in the rain. No more grilling, no more beer. Just folding chairs overturned and ash settling in the air. I picked up my bag, turned to leave. That's when my father stepped in front of me. His voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. I didn't know what they were planning. I met his eyes. I believed that I said. He blinked. Then why? Because you didn't want to know. Silence. The kind that tells you everything. Then he asked the only question that mattered. What? Are you Emily? I took a long breath and answered quietly. Exactly what I said I was. A translator. I turned and walked to my car. No one followed. As I pulled onto the road, the house disappeared in the rearview mirror like a memory I'd outgrown. I thought I might cry, but I didn't. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because something in me had shifted, something final. This wasn't revenge, it was recognition. Not theirs, mine. I had finally stopped asking for their respect, and instead, I'd earned my own. Back in D.C., my clearance was reinstated within 48 hours. No ceremony, no apology. Just a quiet email confirming my status and a calendar invite for a debriefing I didn't attend. I didn't need to. I already knew what I'd say, and more importantly, what I wouldn't. I declined the offer to return full-time, took a leave of absence, and then I booked a one-way ticket to Colorado, to start over, not to run, but to rebuild. The day I left, I got one final message, from the woman at Joint Task Force Echo. It read, Sigma Loop closed. Stay sharp, Carver. And for the record, the system won't forget you. There's a kind of silence you earn. Not the kind they force on you, the silence of secrecy shame or strategic invisibility, but the kind that comes after the storm, the kind that says you did what you had to do. I live in that silence now, in Colorado. I bought a small house outside Boulder, pine trees out back, a winding road up front, and not a single soul in my personal space unless I choose it. I don't lock my phone in a Faraday pouch anymore. I don't scan license plates behind me. I don't sleep with a burner next to the bed. For the first time in over a decade, I wake up without checking the threat matrix before breakfast. And that, to me, is the clearest proof I survived. I didn't go back to the agency. I didn't file a grievance. Didn't ask for a promotion, a medal, or a nameplate on a new door. Because if this story has taught me anything, it's this. I don't need their validation to know what I've done matters. And I sure as hell don't need my father's to feel whole. Now I teach. Not in a university. I teach in silence. I work with a private training initiative that helps linguists transition from field work into forensic threat modeling, where language meets movement intention and preemptive protection. Most of my students are women. Many of them are daughters of men who never understood them. And when they ask me what I used to do, I just smile and say, I used to listen for things no one else heard, because that's still true. I talk to my mother sometimes. It's distant, polite, like neighbors in a shared building who don't want to fight over the hallway light. She doesn't ask about the operation. She doesn't say she's sorry. But last week I got a birthday card from her with a single sentence inside. You were right to act. I was scared. I still am. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something, and I'll take it. My father hasn't called. He won't. But I heard through a cousin who still speaks to me that he doesn't tell the story anymore. The BBQ, the agents, the black SUVs. He used to laugh about it, apparently. Now he says we all misjudged a lot of things. It's the closest thing to an apology I'll ever get. And you know what? That's enough. I don't need revenge. I don't need a courtroom or a confession or a last-minute hug, because I already won. Not when the SUVs pulled up. Not when the agents said federal order. I won the moment I stopped waiting for anyone to acknowledge the weight of what I carried and decided to lay it down anyway. These days, I go hiking. I drink strong coffee on cold mornings. I sit on my porch at night and stare up at the stars without wondering what's hidden behind them. And sometimes, when I'm really still, I hear it again. Not a voice, not a threat. Just that line from the Agent Donahue who looked me in the eye, nodded and said, "Your daughter just prevented a domestic terror escalation tied to your backyard." He didn't say employee. He didn't say analyst. He said daughter. And I think that's what I wanted all along. To prove that I could be his daughter, but still be my own woman. So this is my story. The one I never told in full. The one that started with a steak on a grill and a dismissive line, "You're just a translator," and ended with 6 SUVs, a federal order, and the quiet truth that my words, stopped something no one else even saw coming. I don't need to yell. I don't need to fight. I just need to listen. Because silence isn't just survival, it's strategy. And this time, it spoke for me.